Hey everybody, happy Friday. Hope you're doing well. So I got a good email from somebody that wasn't on YouTube but emailed me directly through the site, which happens from time to time. It's from John Finelli. Hey Mike, great show today with Theta. That was the one where this Greek doesn't matter. Um, Great show today with Theta. On the topic of options, do you use a hedging strategy when it comes to trading? Whether it's using long options to hedge or perhaps spreads, let me know. Thank you, John, for writing in. Appreciate it. I'm not, my whole thing is like I'm a directional trader, so I don't feel that I need to hedge my positions in any particular way. I usually have my position sizing done to a point where I can handle the volatility of the underlying instrument and then some, right? Because sometimes things run amok. Um, so I generally don't have hedged positions, generally speaking. For those of you that don't remember, the video was on, if you're day trading options, right, or even swing trading options, don't look for like weeklies or zero DTEs that have no time because you're afraid of the boogeyman at that point. The theta doesn't matter if you're not in the trade all that much. Now, again, you can calculate what it is, but if the volatility of the underlying is going to be there like you anticipate, it should far eclipse whatever the negative draw on your premium is going to be when you buy puts or calls or you buy bear put spreads, for example, or sell. It really hits option strategies where there's debit balances, meaning it draws against your premium. So to go back to the email, I mean, you can set up. I don't. So the answer to all those questions is I don't. Um, I don't use long options like long puts, right? Because selling calls is not really a hedge. That's an income producing strategy. Primarily, at least in if you're coming off like the Series 7, they call it a partial hedge, only because if you do sell the call and it expires worthless, the only hedge you really have is the credit coming in, which you're not really in control of, right? So they call it a partial hedge in that if you sold a $2 call against a $20 stock, yes, it could go down to 18. The option can expire worthless, but you can still lose up to 18 more dollars. So I typically don't look at selling options as being in a hedged position, if you will. Now, in the case of buying a married put, where you would have a married put in stock, that's a synthetic call, right? So the problem then becomes how many puts do you actually have to buy, though, to fully hedge? Because it's not one to one like they teach you in Series 7 land because of the delta, right? So, off the top of my head, say you buy 1,000 shares of a $20 stock, and you're like, well, I want to fully protect the downside. I'm just going to buy 10 because each contract's 100 shares of these puts at the money. So the problem though is that the delta isn't there. If you have 1,000 shares, you have 1,000 long deltas, right? Because the delta of the any underlying, whether it's cotton or whether it's a stock, the delta is one. If the stock goes up $1, you're going to make $1. If it goes down $1, you're going to lose $1. The delta with the option premium though doesn't translate one for one. So you have to buy extra deltas, and that can get expensive, right? So just like any type of hedge is insurance, and insurance costs you money. So it can really drastically affect your returns. So you might find that you have to buy 20 puts to cover 1,000 shares if you fully want to hedge that position. And so my guess is like, well, why not just trade the thing smaller if you're so afraid to lose money on that optimal position size? Why not just trade 250 or maybe 500 shares and give the thing twice as much room, right? Because if it starts moving against you, you can just get out of it, right? There's an old proverb. It's kind of a made up hokey one, but it's useful here, and that is, if you're out in the water in a boat and the boat's taking on water, you don't drill a hole in the boat to let the water out. And I think that's what happens with options. Like if you're going to do some kind of synthetic options play, you need to establish that at the beginning. The last thing you want to do is be in a position that's losing and be reluctant to take that loss. So then you're going to try to affect a hedge. That's a disaster. that to me is the lack of emotional intelligence, really. So you need to be able to understand, like, put your protective stop in. And this happens a lot, of course, where people are like in this AI craze. Please don't start an AI newsletter, for the love of God. Or like crypto, where people are blinded by what they think the technology can do. So all they can see is upside with no downside. Remember, anything that you buy can go to zero. General Electric, which was one, founded in by whatever, how long ago, 1900, was in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and it fell apart. So, despite what you think and what you choose to believe, you have to be careful with your risk management. So, I don't create synthetic positions as a trading vehicle for trades. I would either trade the option itself instead of just a synthetic call. I would just trade calls and know where I'm going to get out. That to me is much cheaper for you in terms, you end up losing more, is what I'm saying, if you do it the other way. Now, if you're an investor, just position size it to a better level that can help you sleep at night. So you can temper your greed. If you want to day trade around a core position or swing trade around a core position, that might make better sense. But because I know a lot of guys who do that. Now, spreads, that would be like, instead of having the stock, I would have a long call, right? And then sell a call above that. I wouldn't buy like an at the money call and an at the money put on the same instrument. Like, because that to me is like, what's the point? Because you have bullish and bearish position on at the same time. It's like you're kind of guessing. Now, I guess people can set up, straddles and strangles. I don't trade them myself. I'm much more interested in picking one direction when it's pretty obvious. So spreads would be like buy a call with a 20 strike and sell a 30 strike. Of course, you have to figure out, though, then whatever you can make and lose is inside the strike prices, right? So typically the risk reward that I'm looking for is not there. If you're looking for, again, asymmetric returns, right? So you might buy that bull call spread, the 20-30 bull call spread, at a premium of like 4, right? And so the most you can make then is 6. Because if you have a 20-30 strike price spread, whatever you can make and lose is going to happen in between the strike prices. Your max loss will be your net debit, which is 4, and the max gain theoretically would be 6. Everything from 24 to 30 is technically profit, but even the spread has a delta, right? So you're probably not going to achieve the full 6. And so for me, a 6-to-4 ratio is 3-to-2, which is half of 3-to-1. You see what I'm saying? So those bull call strategies and bear put strategies don't really work for me in terms of what I could make. You see? And even if you tried to flip it around and do credits, with credits, the problem is that your max gain on day one, right? So again, you can't get the asymmetry. At least I can't. Maybe you're clever enough to put it together. You probably have to change the strike prices around, in order to get that going on, which is something to look at. So again, try to look for minimum 3-to-1, and then look at, how can you even improve that to 5-to-1. But I don't really mix. I'm either going to use the option as a surrogate for the underlying, or I'm going to trade the underlying. I can't think of a time when I did, a long put with a long futures contract or a long underlying stock and traded it that way. It's not my style. It certainly could be your style. I am not necessarily reluctant to feel the risk in the outright directional trades, even though I take stuff home overnight and over the weekend. So that's really more, how do you feel about making and losing money? So quick one today, but do what you think is best. You can certainly, it's harder to test options data just because it's harder to get the data, but you can certainly do that. It's a good question, but I keep the reasons that I use options, separate. I typically don't hedge. I just position size enough so that if I make money, it makes a difference to my account balance. And especially if I get hit, what is the potential drawdown? That's the most important factor. So I position size accordingly and just stay with the directional, trade that way. Please like and subscribe and share this with your friends if any of this really resonates with you. And I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday.